Has anyone seen, oh, here it is. Guys, can we freak out over this situation?
I like the smell.
I'm gonna teach you my favorite menu for Thanksgiving. It's kind of the best version of each dish that I have made many, many times. And for dessert, it is a very simple Tarte Tatin. I'm going to make 2 because I'm feeding a lot of people, but this Tarte Tatin is simple to make. It is way simpler than making a pie, and it's frankly beautiful, stunning, and has like the most delicious like caramelly, candied, whole apples on top of a beautiful, crunchy, delicious, buttery crust. It's so good. The next thing in our schedule is to prepare and to cook the apples. So the good thing about this dessert is that you can start sort of coring the apples and actually cook them way before everyone arrives. So long as you put everything in the oven at the right time, then you're good. But it does allow for some handy prep time so that you're not frantically preparing dessert while everything is going in the oven and you're doing a million different things. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm going to peel all my apples and I'm gonna core them and then I'm gonna slice them in half. I have a nice combination of apples here. I have some green apples and I have some Honey Crisp. The reason why I choose these is because they're very firm. You want like firm apples, not very soft apples, because if you get really soft apples, it's very likely that they're just gonna fall apart when cooking in the caramel, and you're not gonna end up with like beautiful slices of apple. You're just gonna end up with apple puree, which is delicious, but it's not what we're going for. A bowl for my peel. So I tested this recipe actually many times before writing it, and a lot of cooks tell you to roast your apples in very, very low heat for a long time, like for 2 hours or 2 hours and a half, and then make your caramel and then like cool everything and then place the apples. It was very complicated and it was very finicky. The apple would like fall apart or it would not be cooked enough, and there was very little control because it's happening in the oven, right? Like you don't really know what's happening. And after like the 3rd try, I just decided to cook the apples directly in caramel, and it is definitely the absolute best option. It's just so much simpler that way. You have a lot more control, it's a lot quicker, and you don't have to do this dance of like waiting and cooling and doing again and the caramel separately. Like everything goes in and they cook together, and then you put it in the pot and then you put the puff pastry and that's it. And needless to say, there's so much wisdom from like other cooks out there, but sometimes if it feels too complicated, it probably is too complicated, and there's probably a better way. By the way, you can also use a half a tablespoon measurer to core the apples. If they're very small, it might make sense. I'm sure that there's some like apparatus out there that I don't have. If you have it, feel free to use it. I also tried this recipe without peeling the apples because I was like, oh my God, if I am the cool dad that goes and says that you don't actually have to peel your apples for a beautiful Tarte Tatin, that would be such good news for the world. You do. Doesn't matter how you bake them, it doesn't matter how you cook them, it won't work with the peel. By making this dessert first thing in the morning, it means that you can snack on apple. So, healthy breakfast. Great, all my apples are peeled and sliced, and in a big pot, I'm going to start making my caramel. I make a wet caramel, which means that I take sugar, I put a little bit of water, then I let that water cook off. And then once I have the desired color, I add butter to the caramel to kind of stop the cooking and to give it that beautiful richness. I add a little salt, and then I'm gonna add my apples. And I'm gonna start stirring them and stirring them and stirring them around until all of the water from the apples has evaporated. They have reduced in size, but they are not falling apart. They're just soft to the touch. So, what else am I gonna do? The caramel, the leftover caramel that was in the pot, I transferred it to the bottom of my molds. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna place my apples core side up. I'm gonna assemble them as best as I can. And then on top, I am doing puff pastry. So the puff pastry is, I made it this morning. No, I'm kidding. Can you imagine? Oh my God. I don't know, this is store-bought. And I'm just gonna extend it. I'm gonna cut a ring the size of my mold. I'm gonna place it on top of my apples. And then they're going into an oven at 420. I like to kind of like blast a lot of heat onto my puff pastry at first, maybe for the first like 15 to 20 minutes. And then the rest I'm gonna reduce at 375 just so that it cooks through. But I feel like that blast of heat at 420, that's what you get, that's where you get like the layers of the puff pastry, and that's when it becomes like a nice sturdy base for our Tarte Tatin. And in the meantime, I'm pleased to announce that the Tarte Tatins are ready to come out of the oven. I'm gonna let this tarts cool and set a little bit, not for too long. I still want them to be warm when I flip them over, because if I let them cool fully when I flip them over, then maybe some of the apples are gonna get stuck on the top, which we don't want. So I'm just gonna wait for maybe, let's say 10 minutes, and then I'll flip them over. Finally, I have my 2 Tarte Tatins, which I was able to bake, I was able to flip, and now they have cooled. I can just leave them hanging in the fridge until everyone is done eating. We can slice them. Also, if you let them cool a little bit in the fridge, the apples will be easier to slice. So that's something that I truly recommend to you, just to keep like that hour, hour and a half in the fridge for them to cool, which is usually the time everyone takes to finish their dinner. So it all works out well. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had fun as much as I did. Thank you so much for sticking around. I'll see you in the next one, and happy Thanksgiving. Ciao. Yes? It's like caramelly and appley and like buttery, and I hope everyone's very hungry because there's a lot of food.